Eastern State Penitentiary. Even the name chills the blood. A specter of stone and steel looming large against the Philadelphia skyline. Completed in 1829, its imposing Gothic facade was meant to inspire awe and fear. It was a radical departure from the crowded, chaotic jails of the time. Eastern State was designed for solitary confinement, a revolutionary if controversial concept. Each prisoner lived, worked, and ate alone in his cell. Silence was the rule, broken only by the clang of iron gates or the whisper of guards' footsteps. Whatever your stance, one thing is undeniable. Eastern State Penitentiary is a place where history lingers like a ghost. Eastern State Penitentiary was a product of the Enlightenment. Reformers sought to move away from corporal punishment towards rehabilitation. Solitary confinement was seen as a way to encourage reflection and moral reform. Each cell was, in essence, a miniature monastery. Prisoners had access to their own exercise yard, plumbing, and even a skylight, innovations unheard of at the time. The system, known as the Pennsylvania system, drew international attention. Foreign dignitaries and reformers flocked to Philadelphia to witness this experiment in confinement, but the reality within those walls was often grimmer than the ideals they represented. The silence, intended to be therapeutic, often drove men mad. Mental breakdowns were common. The prison, designed for reform, became synonymous with despair. Despite its flaws, Eastern State's influence on prison design was undeniable. Its radial floor plan and emphasis on solitary confinement were replicated across the globe. It marked a turning point in penal history, a shift from punishment to contemplation, however flawed in its execution. Among its many notorious inmates, Eastern State housed its share of cold-blooded killers. Men like Slick Willie Sutton, the notorious bank robber, spent time within its walls. But it was the murderers who captured the public's imagination. One such figure was Leo Callahan, a mob hitman known for his brutality. Convicted of a gruesome murder, Callahan spent his days in a cell on death row, a chilling reminder of the prison's darker purpose. Another, more infamous resident was Al Capone. Though incarcerated for only a short time, Capone's opulent cell, complete with rugs and a gramophone, became the stuff of legend. It was a stark contrast to the Spartan conditions endured by most inmates. But for every notorious gangster or ruthless killer, there were countless others whose stories have faded into obscurity. Men driven to desperate acts by poverty, despair, or simply bad luck. Their whispers linger in the cold, damp air, a testament to the human cost of confinement. Section 4. The Price of Silence. The Pennsylvania system, with its emphasis on absolute silence, took a heavy toll on the inmates. Deprived of human contact, many succumbed to mental illness. Hallucinations, paranoia, and self-harm became rampant. Prison records paint a grim picture of men driven to madness by the crushing weight of solitude. One inmate, driven to despair, meticulously removed his own teeth with a makeshift tool. Another, convinced spiders were crawling beneath his skin, scratched himself raw. The guards, too, felt the strain. Tasked with enforcing absolute silence, they became adept at reading the subtlest forms of communication. A cough, a shuffle of feet, a tap on the wall, all were potential breaches of the strict code of conduct. The experiment in solitary confinement, once hailed as progressive, began to unravel under the weight of its own cruelty. The silence, intended to foster repentance, instead became a breeding ground for despair and madness. Section 5. Shadows of Reform. By the early 20th century, the tide began to turn against solitary confinement. Critics, citing its devastating psychological effects, called for reform. Eastern State, once a model of modern penology, became a symbol of its failures. The Pennsylvania system was gradually abandoned in favor of congregate labor and limited social interaction. The once silent corridors echoed with the sounds of workshops and the murmur of conversation. But the legacy of solitary confinement cast a long shadow. Eastern State struggled to adapt to these changing philosophies. Overcrowding became a problem, further straining the aging facility. By the mid-20th century, it was clear that Eastern State's days as a functioning prison were numbered. In 1971, Eastern State Penitentiary closed its doors for good. The experiment in solitary confinement had come to an end. But the debate over its legacy and the psychological impact of isolation continues to this day. Section 6. Legacy in Ruins. Today, Eastern State Penitentiary stands as a haunting reminder of America's penal past. Its crumbling walls and empty cell blocks are a testament to the human cost of incarceration. Nature has reclaimed much of the prison, with vines creeping through broken windows. It has become a popular destination for tourists and history buffs alike. Visitors can stand in Al Capone's cell or peer into the desolate spaces. Eastern State Penitentiary prompts reflection on punishment, reform, and the human spirit.